Street, it sort of blows your mind at how amazingly elevated that case got.
Yeah, yeah. But when you dealt with these individuals, and again, we could talk Pizza Bomber all day, and we have.
Right.
But when you dealt with these individuals, and there's still something that says that your colleague Ed Palatella said in one of our conversations is not every psychologically disturbed person is diabolical.
Right.
Is a criminal.
No.
But she was.
Oh, she was.
And so was Rothstein, right?
I still to this day don't think Rothstein got enough credit for how bad he was in his involvement in the case. She gets all the credit, sort of the mastermind.
She's the mastermind.
But
yeah.
man, when you talk about how that scheme was developed, it really was his scheme. It was her.
Yeah, the writing on the paper and the treasure hunt or whatever.
Exactly, the scavenger hunt, the bomb building, the cane gun, everything about it was Rothstein. Her goal was the money, and that's really the sad part, because she was trying to get the money to pay Ken Barnes to kill her father,
which is
to get an inheritance. So it's
so whacked, though, Jerry. I mean, it's really crazy. So are you still talking around the country and the world over this thing?
I do. I'm asked to conferences. I'm asked to present places. I want to say no at some point, but I just can't find.
I want to say no.
The word no in my vocabulary, but because it's so interesting for me, and I think it really helps me in some cathartic way to feel like it comes out. And so, because it was a lot of stress, and everybody who went through it, and it wasn't just Jerry Clark. There was teams of people that put effort into this. I just get the one that talks about it.
The making the connection between the federal case and what the local law enforcement was dealing with, that really was the breakthrough, wasn't it?
It really was, because when you look at that, you had 3 different jurisdictions. You had 3 deaths.
Because they didn't all come together right away, did they?
No. And that was really the job of the investigation, to link those 3 deaths, right? You had, obviously, Mr. Wells, Mr. Panetti, and then Mr. Roden, all 3 deaths in 3 weeks. So to link those into one case became the really difficult challenge.
Wow. And what about, again, you talk about this. How much of it, this case is studied, for, do they call them cadets when they're coming up in the FBI, or?
So new agent training class.
Training class,
so, yes,
okay.
They have 50 per class going through, and they'll talk about major cases, including this one, and they utilize them as training tools. And I was fortunate enough that I could use it at Gannon University. I actually created a course that I used this class in.
Yeah.
And it was the most popular course ever, because even other majors other than criminal justice were taking the class. So it was a really good class, fun for me too.
Talk about who's entering law enforcement. Again, we were talking off air about workforce.
Right.
Let's face it. Like I heard a number that New York City, NYPD, short 1,500 cops.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're pretty maximum right now in the city force, but you hear about Pittsburgh being short. What's your take on law enforcement as a career, and what does law enforcement have to do to build, an attractiveness to it, do you think?
Right. Law enforcement's not just a job, it's a career. So it's not something you want to do for a year or 5 years and then move on and move up or move over. This is a career. Usually if you start in law enforcement, you go 25 years at it. It's difficult now because recruiting's hard. Sometimes we see things on the news that don't look good for law enforcement.
Yeah.
Then prospective candidates don't want to go through that. They don't want to make a decision that was wrong or faulty. And so then they become the news. And so it's a difficult area to be in because you're scrutinized. And you ought to be.
Yes,
we have to be held
at
the highest standard. I'm not diminishing the standard. You have to be held at the highest standard. But that's a lot of stress. And so you see, reluctance to go into the field.
Well, and, it used to be, and I think it still is, you get extra points if you have military service. But now, again, you, as an entrepreneur, you know that if you have an ex-Army, ex-Air Force, ex-Navy guy or gal, they're highly sought after, aren't they?
It's competitive now. I mean, everybody's searching for them. I, in the private sector, love retired law enforcement or retired military because they have such a background, and you know their background is solid. You know that they know the job. You know they know how to have good judgment. They usually were trained pretty well. But boy, they are very well sought after, like you said.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the other part of this is to achieve some diversity in our force, right? I mean, it just seems like it's just a really, really difficult situation.
It is, and we need diversity. We need people who come from all walks of life. We really do, because they come with different perspectives and different ideas and different challenges they've been through to get to where they are. And I love the fact that we're seeing more diversity in our hiring attempts. We still need to do better. We always need to do better, but you got to force yourself to get every type of person you can in this field, because that's who we're basically taking care of and representing.
Yeah, it sounds like for example, for the EPD, Lieutenant Lennox is going to to Army-based communities. You go to Columbus, Georgia, to Fort Benning to maybe think about somebody that might be getting out, as a sergeant or a corporal, maybe to think about career in law enforcement.
And he also, I'm such good friends with Tommy Lennox, and I love the fact that he's starting these kids early in the PALS program that I've participated with him for years. And I do a forensics day for them, and they just get so excited to see fingerprints lifted or whatever it is that we're doing. And they've done such a great job, because that's where we're going to get our recruits from. Really.
Wow. All right, we're talking to Jerry Clark here, and you recently retired from Gannon after all these years. What's next for you? Because I think people might have missed the idea that you started this aero security program.
Sure.
Here,
so this was interesting. Probably now about 8 years ago, Bob Nelson, who owned Fisher Security, came to me and said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to retire. Would you be interested? There's only one person in Erie, that I would think would want to, keep this here. I don't want to go national, the whole thing." And I said, "Absolutely. Let me take a look at it." We took a look at it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a try, and I'm going to try to do it in conjunction with what I was doing at Gannon.
Sure.
Because I thought, what's the best way to get employees was to take students as interns, because I know in the previous guests that you had, you were talking about interns and how that works.
Yeah.
It works. I brought on an intern from Gannon that I handpicked from class. And by the way, I hired numbers of interns from Gannon, because I ran the internship program for criminal justice. And he now has worked his way up from working at a guard position to our patrol car driver to now inside office. Now he's director of my operations. He's running the whole thing. And so that shows you the internal, push that you have from taking students or kids that are young and really fostering them into the program. And that's what I did at Fisher. And Fisher just reached a point where it was getting so big that I couldn't
what
handle.
were the primary functions? Were you doing, grocery stores? Or what kinds of things did you do?
So it's so interesting. Fisher had been around since 1974, and they were basically industrial based.
Okay.
So a lot of the facilities like Don John Shipbuilding and Erie Sand and Gravel, Reed Manufacturing, they're really industrial. When I took over, I started seeing that the market is now everywhere, because security is everywhere, and the fear of security. So we're now at several UPMC sites, and we're at Community Health Net, and we're at different places that you would think, wow, do you really need security, say at a facility like that, an agency? And I'd say, yeah, we just are there as the eyes and ears for the
Heck, you need security at church.
Well, it's funny you say that, Joel, because we now do several churches. I've been asked to do assessments at several churches on what they need for security. It's unbelievable that you'd have to think about security at church.
But it's a soft target, and it's in the news way too often, Jerry. I mean, gosh.
Too much. It's in the news. You have to pay attention. If you're not, you're behind the curve. Schools and churches. There are innocent folks that don't expect things to happen, and now we got to protect them, and that's what we do.
Talking to Dr. Jerry Clark here. We'll take our first break. It is 18 past 4 o'clock here on Talk Erie. We're catching up with Dr. Jerry Clark, former FBI special agent and now former Gannon professor. And Jerry, let's talk about you grew Fisher Security to a place where, man, it became big and pretty attractive to a larger firm, right?
Exactly. I had a few different firms contact me, and some of them I just wasn't interested in. I don't like private equity. I don't like anything involved in people that aren't going to care for my clients the way I do. Mm-hmm. And so I had two conditions. One, it has to be a private group. And two, I had to stay on and make sure my clients were taken care of the way I do it. And both of those took place with Aero Security. And Aero Security is out of Smith Town, Long Island, and they have taken me to new places. They are national, and they do such an unbelievable job in many different states. But now I'm a new role, SVP of business development for Aero, and I go out and help attract new business through some of my connections nationally, as well as try to grow this region on Erie, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Cleveland, and that's what they're trying to do.
And it is, what some of the trends that you saw under Fisher are just expanding, I would imagine. The idea that, it's more than just protecting like equipment or, loss prevention, but it's really there's a lot of more to it, isn't there?
There's so much there. There's so much in security, and I try to train, my officers or guards the right way. A lot of my clients are my friends, so if I'm working and have guards at Champion Ford,
right.
Mark Winkler is a very close friend of mine, and I want to make sure he's happy.
Sure.
So I don't lose sight of that. I try to stay involved, which I am. My director of operations now, John Sapienza, who I brought out of Gannon right with me, he and I and a whole crew that I have here in Erie really make sure we're taking care of the people first, and then we'll worry about everything else later.
Has that business changed? I mean, back when my dad was an officer, they had the thing called the Rent-A-Cop, and he actually had a couple of side jobs that he had regular, but that's not a thing much anymore, is it?
Well, they're out there, but police officers and retired or really current, they can draw a lot of money per hour. And so some of the businesses, they now turn to the private security area where I can pay less per hour than you might have to charge, a police officer that's working part-time or something. So it's really beneficial to them because now they're not paying benefits. And plus they get insurance breaks. So if a company hires a private security firm and they say, hey, we have private security, their insurance now can get lowered because they have security on premises.
What about technology? What have you seen happening with technology with security? And
my gosh, I'm so glad you asked that because it's so important. Cameras and systems and recognitions of software. And now
you're doing facial recognition?
I'm telling you, security. I was just on a call this morning out of New York that they're saying private security and security guards will now probably have body cameras within 5 years. Within 5 years, that's going to move to that type of system because that's where we're headed. It's and the recognition software, and we're now working with a company called iPro, and they have camera software for schools and for all different capacities that I couldn't even believe, because even in my term in law enforcement, I watched technology I remember having a bag phone in Cleveland, going up the shoreway thinking I was just, the fat cat, with this bag phone. And now when I think of how far, we've come with technology, and it's affected all of us, including law enforcement.
I want you to go over a conversation that you might have with a prospective client for security, because I'm there's probably folks out there, CEOs or small business owners that are like, I don't need this. All right, I'll buy a couple cameras from the big box store and be done with it. Because first off, you got to recognize that, because if there's something that happens at your store or your plant, the first thing that the detective is going to ask for, okay, well, show us your film,
show us your footage,
and
I got to tell you, it's the difference between being proactive and reactive. So if you have cameras and no one's monitoring them, you're not going to know till the next day. Now, you might go back and say, okay, here's maybe the person that did it. But we like to be proactive in law enforcement, and certainly in private security, where we're going to watch to see while it's happening so that we can have eyes and ears immediately. The second part is the deterrent factor.
Yeah.
It really is a difference that I've learned over my time in law enforcement. Criminals focus on soft targets. You mentioned the term soft targets. Soft targets. If they see a security guard, armed or unarmed, in a facility, they're more likely to avoid it just because there's places that don't have it.
Right.
And they're going to go to the easier area. And that's why I'm saying private security is so important, because it prevents and it deters. And those are the two big things that I try to push.
That makes a lot of sense. The this hypothetical here, this business owner, what are some of the businesses that seem to be skeptical at first, but you really ought to have some help here?
No, it's true. A lot of the industrial places are like that, where they're thinking, well, we lock the doors, and the doors, nobody else can get
even
in.
Warehousing?
Sure.
Okay.
No, people, there is no place. I mean, we've mentioned churches, for goodness sakes. there is no place that's really free from the chance that something could happen. So just putting a plan in place, and that's what I always tell somebody,
Yeah.
right? You can do a threat, risk, vulnerability assessment. We used to call them TARVAs. A threat, risk, vulnerability assessment. I'm going to come in and say, hey, here's where you're vulnerable. Here's the hole in your fence, or here's where your camera has a blind spot, or here's. We can do assessments that say this might be helpful for you. Maybe you don't need a guard here. Maybe you need my patrol car service, where I go by staggered days, staggered nights, shifts, and pull on doors or shine lights on the
Oh my
building.
gosh.
So our patrol car runs all night, and we're out there checking on doors, pulling on things, and making sure. Or if you have a shift change, say you're working a third shift, you have a shift change at night, you don't want people walking out to the parking lot without somebody there, we come and we'll do that. So there's so many ways security is there for you. You just have to be forward thinking and reach out and ask for the help.
One of in a recent assessment that we had in some of our buildings is the idea of, well, what are you going to do to stop someone just ramming their truck into the side of your building? That happens a lot more than we think.
Oh my goodness. I mean, again, when you start to think, when people have ill intent, it's limitless. It's
Right.
limitless to what they can
You
do.
see those
Yeah.
jewelry stores, for example.
Oh.
You could have all the alarms in the world, but if they're just plowing their F-150 into it, smash and grabs,
You see them all the time. And so, again, that deterrent of knowing, well, there is somebody there, it just makes that bit of a difference.
That's really something else. We're talking to Dr. Jerry Clark here. We got to take a break at the bottom of the hour. We'll get into some of the other ideas that are coming ahead in security, as well as his illustrative career here. You are tuned to Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. We are available on 103.3, 105.9, and AM 1530. Don't forget, we stream this as well on our website at talkerie.com, and we're also on Facebook and YouTube at this hour here. It is 4:30. Always enjoy talking to Dr. Jerry Clark here, former FBI special agent, former professor again at University of Criminal Justice, and now fully embedded in the private security world, and it's Aero Security now.
Aero
Wow.
Security, and their capabilities far outreached what I could do with Fisher. They have canine capabilities. They have armed and unarmed. They have patrol car service. They have executive protection for different executives. So it's just a huge organization.
Talk about recruiting and training for security these days. But again, everybody's complaining about workforce. I would imagine that's tough for you too, right?
It was the hardest thing when I left, the government, which I spent 25 years in. I never really hired anybody. I never paid a check before. I never did anything related to private business. And when I got out in the business world, it was such a challenge because the hardest part is really putting good people in good places and recruiting and hiring. And so I see why it's difficult for all of business, not just security, and then COVID you throw in, and it just became a real challenge.
Yeah. If someone is interested in this line of work, again, maybe they don't want to be an officer on the street, and this is a different approach, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, armed becomes a little bit more like law enforcement, but not exactly. And we.
Oh, so you have unarmed and armed.
Yes, we
Those
have
are two
both.
different levels.
Exactly,
Okay.
And unarmed is really the eyes and ears for local and the client, local police and the client. So you could do either of those. Reach out to us at Aero Security. I can get the phone number out there for everybody.
Are you seeing more women joining in this line of work?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh! It's funny. When I went through the FBI Academy, I bet we had 4 or 5, females in a class of 50.
Wow.
And it got now where it's 25 at minimum. I mean, it's
seriously.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. Female officers and guards, we absolutely need in the field. We do. We need for several different reasons, but I love female guards to come in. They work outstanding. They're usually better report writers.
They're more precise.
They're more precise. They pay attention to details. All my male law enforcement out there, don't hate me. Don't call in. I'm just joking, but and serious in some respects. But no, they really do a great job, and we welcome them open arms.
Wow. Let's roll back. How long has it been now? It's 22 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
Since
August 28, 2003. So August will be 22 years of.
And where were you in your career? Because you had just come up from. You weren't here in Erie that long before that, right?
No, I just transferred back to Erie in 2001.
So a couple years.
And 9/11 hit, and then I was down in Pittsburgh most of the time at the Pittsburgh airport trying to straighten out all the flights and things. But
wow,
it was.
Did you go to Shanksville or?
So we had the choice of direction from my division. Each division went different ways, but Pittsburgh division, you either went to Shanksville or you went to the Pittsburgh airport to make sure we got that back on track.
On 9/11
on
itself.
9/11.
Okay.
No planes were flying, and then pilots would come out and say, I'm not flying that person in seat 6C. Get them off my plane. Just unbelievable.
And FBI was involved.
And we'd say, well, sir, you're the captain of the plane. We'll interview him, but we're not taking him off.
Wow.
So they had the power, the pilots do, to actually take them off or tell them they can't fly.
They have full power over their ship.
I had no idea. And then we would interview them, and it turned out it might just be an innocent doctor trying to get on the next flight, and we'd put them on. But that was sort of the choice. So I had just returned home. And in the FBI, you get on a list called an OP list, Office of Preference. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to come back to Pittsburgh because I love Erie. And I wanted to come to Erie. And it took a while, but we got transferred back.
And how
it worked.
did you work out of the federal courthouse?
So I was out of the 717 State.
717
where
State.
The Highmark
Okay.
building at the time. Now
Gotcha.
it's
And how many agents work here in Erie?
so
generally?
there's 7 usually, a supervisor
Erie?
and 6 or 7 agents, and then task force group. And I'm telling you what, this office is busy and it's got a lot to do, and they do tremendous work. And I'm proud of them. I really am. They don't always get noticed.
Yeah.
But they are out there and they're doing the
And
job.
I think in one of our conversations you said the majority of FBI work here has to do with narcotics. Is that still the case?
It is, but there's public corruption things they get involved in. There's white collar crime they get involved in. We're always
This whole thing with Hurdle and Brown, that was like one of the biggest cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that would be considered a white collar case. So,
Yeah.
And then you have obviously domestic and international terrorism, which you don't like to think occurs.
Yeah.
But there's always things to do that go unnoticed. And again, one day, I would love to just share everything I knew about what I did. But just
what about we concerned a lot about human trafficking and sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Being at a crossroads here with 9079, having the port. That's a pretty big concern, isn't it?
Oh, without a question. It makes me nervous. The internet is so unbelievably great, right? And we all use it every day. And when we use it, we're using it for good things. There are so many people on there using it for bad things and luring and kidnapping and people who aren't saying truths and aren't who they're supposed to be. And we had a case here. I'll never forget it because she was 14 and she thought she was talking to a 15-year-old. When they go to meet, he's 35.
Oh, geez.
So those cases exist, and you wouldn't think they do, but any city of any size is subject to that problem, and we got to be vigilant.
Jerry, put some headsets on because we'll grab a phone call here. Hi, you are live with Dr. Jerry Clark here on Talk Erie. Join in.
Really fascinating conversation. I have a question, just out of curiosity, because I've actually met an FBI agent of all things at a wedding a few years ago, and he was open to me asking a few questions. Any feelings about the FBI / reputation, politicization, perhaps weaponization? This fellow told me that he thought the best thing the FBI could do is move out of Washington. You were with them, I guess, so I'd love to hear your response. I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I mean, that's a narrative that's out there, Jerry, right? I mean...
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know that we have time, Joel. It might be, I don't know who your next guest is, but thank you for the question, because I really appreciate it too, because FBI agents are people, right? And they have feelings and thoughts about that. And I certainly do. And I think the FBI lost its way for a while, to be quite frank.
Really?
And,
okay.
The mystique is what the FBI lives on, and if it's not there, it takes away a lot of the. I don't want to say power, but it does take away some control that we had that I thought we lost, and rightfully so, because we had people in the highest level of power and control that did become politicized.
Yeah.
And the street agents all the way up to the field supervisors to the, SAC level, absolute perfect. But that highest level lost its way. And for that, I was really upset. Mm-hmm. And I know every agent that worked the field, worked cases, worked as a supervisor, felt the same way.
It seems remarkable when you think about it, how much churn we've had at that director of FBI, considering that the original guy. Who am I thinking of?
Comey?
No, well, I'm saying we went from the Untouchables era.
Oh yeah,
J. Edgar Hoover.
Right.
I mean, Hoover was there until when we were born.
Yes.
Right, and into the 70s, and then it's been a bit of a revolving doors in this century since the 2000s, right? I mean,
So he went 50 years,
Yeah.
which now there's a term limit of 10.
okay,
So you can only go 10 now, and maybe rightfully so, right?
Sure.
But certainly somewhere in there we lost our way again,
Yeah.
and I,
do
there's
you have
several
some
reasons why,
confidence
but
with the current director? I mean, what do you think?
I think the good thing about the current director is they've recognized they had to, really make change. All right,
And he's former FBI, right? Wasn't he an agent or something? Or
No, he was a U.S. attorney.
he was an attorney. okay.
So he there's only been one FBI director that was an agent, and that was
Interesting.
Louis Freeh.
Sure,
and he was only
yeah.
an agent for 5 or 6 years.
Out of New York, right?
Out of New York.
Yeah.
And then he was a U.S. attorney and a judge.
Yes.
But he was the only one. The rest have come from, all different factions. And I
Hmm.
think that becomes challenging because they don't know the culture of the Bureau. And so it is a culture, and it's a bureaucracy, and you have to understand it to run it.
Wow. Interesting conversation for sure. I wanna go back to the pizza bomber there, and again, the tentacles of this case continue here. Over 22 years, or almost 22 years later. Talk about what you've been working on. Is there another book coming out? Is there a movie? What are you looking at here?
Yeah, so I'd love to be able to say more, but I can say this, that Ed Palatel and I have signed another agreement, and this one's for a scripted version. So an unscripted and scripted are the way they sort of title those. Unscripted are like docuseries, like
Sure.
Evil Genius. Scripted would be actors and actresses that would play the roles in movies or series. And so we've just signed another agreement where they're now putting together a scripted version of this.
Does it at all surprise you, the fascination after all these years? I mean, all the questions and the
Yeah.
theories. People, there's all these TikTok investigators, right, these days?
Yeah, they're all out there, and there's a lot of theories out there. I just keep saying, you have to go back to what evidence was presented at trial, and that's really what you have to follow, and that's all we tried to do. We didn't have a direction that we wanted to follow. We had to follow the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And when I taught at Gannon, I stress that so much. Evidence takes you to the truth. And when you get to the truth, you'll know it. And that's what they'll present at trial. And beyond a reasonable doubt is a very high burden.
Sure is.
And rightfully so. You don't want any innocent people in jail. And so I want that standard. I want to be able to work to the highest level. And that's what we proved in that case. So if you followed the evidence, it was pretty clear.
So you guys are basically writing a script at this point. Yeah.
So there-
Do you like this process?
I learned a whole lot about things that I never, first it was the private security, then teaching in college. And now that whole entertainment world is a whole world I never, ever imagined I'd be in. Wow. And so to think that people would want to hear me talk about anything surprises me to this day.
Here we are at 105.9. We want to hear you, Jerry Clark. Let's get another phone call going here. Hi, you're live with Dr. Jerry Clark here on Talk Erie. Go ahead.
I like what Jerry Clark said about what he just said. There's such a high burden that you have to prove that somebody needs to be in jail.
Okay.
And, that kind of reflects on what happened this past weekend with that guy that got shot by the parole officers. He was caught doing something wrong. He went to the court and he had paper on him. And I don't think that the parole officer did anything wrong.
Well, we'll have the investigation bear that out. I appreciate the phone call.
But the guy was already in trouble once.
Yeah.
And he was driving away with the guy with the parole officer at the side of the door, right?
Well, we don't know that yet. We have to let the investigation bear itself out, right? I mean, we
right.
want the transparency to happen. Thanks for the phone call. Appreciate it.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you before I let you go about something that's really troubles us is the number of senior citizens, and we're getting there, Jerry, right?
Right, yeah.
But seniors seem to be easily duped by these scammers online, whether it is, some kind of love interest. You hear about these lonely men and women, mind you, that get scammed out of their life savings from a paramour. That's some shyster in a foreign country that's just faking this whole thing out, or I'm going to come meet you and all this. And then there's the whole thing of, you come and invest in something, or you've got a virus on your computer. Or you need to go get some $2,000 worth of Bitcoin and send it to us to fix the virus, or else you're going to jail. The FBI is knocking at your door.
The FBI is
This is
coming.
insane.
Oh, it's so crazy that I think you could do a segment every week on the newest scam. I really feel like you could put out every week something that's going on. Think about this: even the best and brightest, young middle-aged people can get scammed. When you think now, elderly and children, they're even more vulnerable, and so. We look at things and say, boy, that looks real. I might have to click on that. Think about people that don't even have that, capacity to make the
Right.
judgment. So constantly at the FBI, we used to get calls about just what you talked about. Elderly people getting, tricked into paying ransoms for grandchildren. Or, I mean, it never ends. The schemes never end. And as soon as one gets caught up, there was one going around where the sheriff's going to come get you because, you missed jury duty or something. And people were calling me going, is this true? It looks so real. I even had a lawyer call me. There was a friend of mine, and he goes, I'm looking at this and it looks so real. And I'm saying it's a scam. So yes, I think that you have to constantly be almost thinking, my wife, the psychologist, Danielle, calls it paranoia. I call it just sort of vigilance. You have to almost be at the level of paranoia at what you're looking at.
I think part of this is totally to the psych. We seem to trust everything on the internet. You have to totally turn that around. I just had this conversation with a cybersecurity expert from VNet, and like the default should be this is not trustworthy. Right. Don't instantly trust something. Don't trust it.
No,
everything's
absolutely.
a scam that you're reading, unless you absolutely know it's from them.
No doubt.
That person.
Immediately look at the email. I mean, if it looks like the body of it's from Spectrum, which looks very real because they can make it look very real, but the email itself is a bunch of letters and numbers. It's not a Spectrum email. So,
yes.
Always make sure you're paying attention to what you're looking at.
All right. So what does your summer and fall look like? What are you going to be working on?
So I'm going to be working on a number of different things for Arrow. I'm doing a lot of school safety and discussions on behavioral traits for school shooters that I've done a few webinars.
Gosh.
So I've put together a great program for them for different school districts. I'm going to be working on a couple national contracts for them. I'm going to do a couple presentations coming up. So a lot of things going on for me locally and nationally.
Okay, put your forensic psychology hat on. If you're a parent or a grandparent, and you have that troubled young person in your life, what are you looking for?
You're looking for, and that's so amazing of a question, Joel, because I go through these in this PowerPoint that I have. You're looking for changes.
So the change is the thing.
Oh, I always go to what we call I learned this from a profiler from the FBI, Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole, and together we wrote the profile on the Pizza Bomber case. But she told me, Jerry, always start with a baseline of somebody, because some people are highly excitable to start with. So now if they're excited, you don't know if they're excited new or that's just the way they are. Same with your child or your grandchild. What are they like normally? Are you watching differences in eating habits, the way they're dressing, the way they're online, the time they're alone, who their friends are? All these different things you can watch for that might change. And now you're seeing they're either losing or gaining weight, or their school grades have gone from A's to D's. I'm telling you, their behavioral traits, drug usage, alcohol usage, always mixes into what I always refer to as a pot of stew. And you add the ingredients of addiction, and oh my God, it takes it to a new place.
Wow.
So pay attention to what they're doing, who they're talking to, right? And what they're doing online.
And you really can't be fearful about asking a hard question. I mean, if you just stay passive in this, I mean, you could be in for a real hurt.
You will be shocked to know what they're doing if you're not paying attention, because you're not their friend, you're their parent or you're their grandparent. You still want to be friendly because
Yeah,
we're their parent and we love them to death. But you're not trying to make friends. You have to ask the hard questions. And that was difficult for me, quite honestly. I don't like asking my own children hard questions, but you have to do it because you want to know everything about what they're doing.
Last question for you, and I got like a minute, but it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of President Trump being shot in Butler.
Yeah.
Isn't it astounding how active just even Western Pennsylvania has been for national law enforcement events? I mean, it's really almost peculiar.
Ugh.
I mean, we're not in L.A. or New York or Chicago, right?
No. And that's where you think these tendy, sleepy towns
Yeah.
or small areas, things can't happen. Look at Erie, Peach Street.
Yes.
Look at Butler. You say to yourself, this can happen, and it can happen anywhere. So you have to be paying attention at all time. I call it situational awareness. Everybody in law enforcement or the military knows that term very well. Pay attention to what's going on around you. I don't just walk down the street. I'm scanning the street as I'm walking. Do that. Pay attention. Be in a crowd. Be in a group. Don't walk alone. Things that you can do to harden that target to make you less likely to become, a victim for society.
Yeah, a man that you got to listen to. The wisdom of Dr. Jerry Clark. Good to see you, sir.
Great
Appreciate
to see you and Shaney. Thanks so much for having me.
When you've got that movie coming out, let us know.
I will get you involved.
We're back here in a little bit here. It's 4 minutes in front of 5.